What? Oh, a terrible offering. You really don't want to do this. It tastes terrible.
Not today.
What?
Oh man. Okay. Get you off the big screen, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday. It is another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am, as typical, your host, Matt Rhys, coming to you from beautiful. It was a beautiful day in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Not too hot, not too cold. Just right. Just right. Don't let my Hawaiian shirt fool you. It was not a tropic paradise. It was a wonderful early fall day. Hey, joining me on my whatever this side is, the thing screws me up over there, is Twitless. Twitless, how goes it?
Hey, I'm tired.
Oh yes. Oh yes. That's the life of an academic, my friend. Or a construction worker.
I think at this point it's just American. If you have
anybody who works for a living just gets tired at the end of the day.
I think people who don't work at this point are getting tired. I think it's just like if you just live in this country, you're just getting tired.
You feel it wearing on you. Yeah. How are you holding up under the general malaise and miasma there, Metal?
I'm doing all right. I'm only tired because I stayed up until like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You've got to stop doing that.
Well, some people can live a nocturnal lifestyle. I used to do that for a living. I'm pretty adept at it.
Yeah, your body hits a certain point. It's like somewhere in your 30s, and your body just stops being able to like do the Wolverine regeneration that your 20s is able to do.
Yeah, it's true.
Actually, on average, I'm less tired staying up all night than I am on a normal schedule. And I used to have like chronic insomnia when I was younger. And I think it's because, I don't know, maybe I was just fed at the wrong hours as a baby or something. I don't think I was supposed to be awake during the day, but I was forced to because that was like school and stuff. Ever since like I became an adult and I could start like doing my own schedule, I've been way more alert. It's just like this is still, I don't know, before noon for me compared to most people. So
yeah, I am myself a kind of a third shift person. When I used to work overnights in the middle of winter at Walmart way back in the day, exciting comic book conversation. I had a situation. It was in the middle of winter. I was working at Walmart overnights, and I'd get up for work after sunset, and I'd get home before sunrise in the morning. And I did that for a couple of months in the dead of winter, and I was like, like no, I can't live like this. I need the sunshine, man. But as long as I get that in my day, if I can easily stay up till 3 and get up after 10 and be really, really, really productive. But I don't have a job where I get to wake up at 10 and then go into work. I'm supposed to be there before then now. So it's important. It's important to regulate. Anyhow, one thing I did last night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had fallen asleep early, and I woke in the middle of the night to try to prepare to do a few things. And one of the things that I did was read Superman #4. And I really, really liked it. I'm very excited to talk about that.
That's cool. I was wondering how this issue was going to hit.
It was a really fun story, and there is only one hugely negative thing I have to say is there was one panel where they forgot to draw on Weird Al's mustache. It just disappeared, and then it came back later, and I was like, "Oh, come on, guys! You're making real comic book money here. You're not just trying to give away copies at a local con." By the way, 2 weekends, Scottsbluff, Nebraska, High Plains Minicon. It's free. Be there. Anyhow, so where do we want to start talking about it? That's what I'm asking.
Let's see.
Probably the beginning.
Probably the beginning. So to remember where we left off last time in Superman 3, Superman was able to, with the help of Lex Luthor, sort of, kind of, Superman was able to defeat the Parasite and agreed to the devil's bargain of becoming the new face of Super, whatever you call it.
It's Supercore.
Supercore. Instead of LexCorp, it's Supercore. It's called Mustache Fever. I learned that from the Tick. Anyhow.
Good show.
Good show. Great show. Great show. Have you guys seen the new Amazon series? Not new, but a couple years ago.
Yes, I have.
It's not very good.
Yeah, it only lasted 2 seasons. I saw the pilot when it was originally free on Amazon, and on the Roku device, Amazon has a free channel for content, and we were gonna watch the Tick, but I haven't done it yet.
It is shockingly mid.
Yeah, the first episode it was very very potential, but that was about what it was. It was just like there's this.
I would not say it's bad. I would not say it's bad, but it is so shockingly mid when you compare just how brilliant the comics and the cartoon show were. Like the cartoon show, it's just yeah.
I was gonna say the first live action series with Patrick Warburton. Patrick Warburton was like designed in a lab to play that character. Shocking. I liked it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the Tick. So
that might be a good episode sometime.
We'll have to do Tick episode. Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that. So, but anyway, did any of us bring visual aids? Because I forgot to grab them today. I'll be completely honest.
I've got a few I can share. Give me a second.
Let's do it. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So one of my big takeaways from the story, and we'll probably get into it a little bit, but I'll kill a little bit of time with it, is I was really impressed with how subtly they threaded in a little world building into the story. Mm-hmm. It kind of defines the shape of the paradigm in a way that it went out here. Also, hey, I've got to say right there, we're starting off with this white-haired chick out of nowhere. It's just there's no lead in to the whole deal. It's a little weird. Did anybody figure this out? What was going on this page in the first page? I just have to know.
What do you mean by figure out? Like the connection between characters and stuff?
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't know if this is one of those things where, like, if you were up on your current DC lore, you saw coming or not. But no, I don't think I did.
Yeah. I picked it up. Almost everything I picked up that's in this page. I picked up when I first read it, and I was just like, just because I did quite a bit of Superman reading in the 90s, so that's kind of my excuse for that. So there's a woman here making Pop-Tarts and opens the door because surely there is someone she needs to meet on the other side of the door, and it is.
Booyah.
Oh my goodness, it's Weird Al Yankovic in a wheelchair.
I actually, before we get to that, I have to say this little thing, which is
I like the Pop-Tarts.
I
love the Pop-Tarts.
Williamson's art on Superman is not my initial choice, I guess, for a Superman artist. I think what Williamson is doing, I think it's perfect in terms of pairing like the tone of what he's going for. And I think that that there are things I do like about the art. But one thing I do like about Williamson, and I have brought this up a couple times, is that Williamson has done some interesting things with layouts. And so one thing I got to point out that I just kind of love, and it's just the tiniest detail, but when you think about how your eye is kind of guided through the page, you're typically following, not always, but you're often following either a Z path or other kind of a deliberate kind of pathway through the page. And I just love the little detail of that little sun ray of sunlight that then points
yes.
directly to the popping Pop-Tarts. And it just means that there is a deliberate bit of craftsmanship that's being put into the comic in terms of like guiding the reader's vision through the page. And I those types of things always, they always appeal to me. So when artists are putting in that type of thought, like how is not just the story in individual panels, but what is the story of the page and how am I guiding the reader through it? And I think it's Campbell, I think, right? It's Campbell who's doing the artwork here. I think Campbell is I don't know, like there's some moments that that in this series that I just like that he what he's doing with that. So
yeah,
I probably
I agree. I think the layout on this page is great. It gives it enough space to that you can feel the flow of time really well. I also love the way that perspective is used to exaggerate motion in the last two panels that tie together a single panoramic within, or appear to tie in a single panoramic within that exaggerated sweep of motion. And it really gives the Siobhan, the character here, so much energy that there's, and that accentuates with the dialogue. You got somebody who's loving being a morning person. And
she's very British. Yeah. It's very clear. Yeah, it's very, very clear that we've got someone from at the very, like it's not entirely clear from the page exactly where she's from, but you definitely know, okay, UK. But then we
opens the door to fight.
Don't think that's an actual Pop-Tart flavor. There are plenty of pink Pop-Tarts with things on top of it, but there is none that has a blue swirl. If I had to guess, I would assume it's some variation of birthday cake.
You said Flop-Tart.
Flop-Tarts.
It is a Flop-Tart because it's not real.
And then we get, so this is where and so I kind of want to pull the room here, because this design of our this is Mr. Graft. I kind of dig Mr. Graft. I am on the fence regarding the Power Ranger minions that he's got with him.
I think if you didn't have something like that, then he would not be threatening at all.
No, clearly trying to ride the hype of Skibbity Toilet.
Yeah.
I know. I'm totally fine with him having minions. Totally fine with him having the minions. It's the fact that I think I've seen, like, they look literally like they're from a Power Rangers cartoon.
Well, maybe if I watched Power Rangers, that would mean something to me. Fizz, we are looking at Superman, the Dawn of DC issue 4.
So, like I said, I'm on the fence on that. So, like, there's clear. I've seen this in Action Comics as well, and with some of the Superman stuff. But I think it's also just DC Comics as a whole. Probably Marvel as well. There's a bleed over, I guess. There's experimentation with I think the influence of manga is seeping in times, and I think that's fine. But like, I think in moments like this, you can really see it. Metal, like I'm not crazy, right? Metal, those are Power Ranger villains, like minions.
They could be. I mean, I could see those in a lot of things.
Okay.
But I definitely could see them being like some weird henchmen in some series of Power Ranger.
Yeah, or
they're definitely no putties.
Yeah, they're not putties, but I'm like, in some tokusatsu, like some weird tokusatsu, there's a bad guy that's got little aspirin pill heads.
And one of the
probably
things,
would be more likely to be in like Kamen Rider than anything.
Okay.
And one thing to consider here is you guys, that I notice from my aged place, like that seems natural because the people drawing the comics are young, like you kids. So they would have grown up with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I was already past it by the time they got around. So I have like no like love for Power Rangers at all. And so yeah, the fact that it looks vaguely like whatever, Okay.
I need Cider Hype here. Cider Hype would know exactly like what tokusatsu exactly that came from. He'd probably come up with the episode and say, "Oh yeah, the one
probably.
with the aspirin heads. It's this one."
I could tell you it's definitely not from the first 12 series of Power Rangers because I've seen all of those.
Okay.
There you have it. So
like I said, I'm a little on the fence on that because like for a moment I'm like Power Ranger villains. Mr. Graff being kind of weird and creepy, I kind of like as a direction for a villain because like he's like clearly like I don't wear shirts is his fashion statement, and
it's great because he's got no shirt but he's got the lab coat, so he's like he's a skis bag but he's respectable. He's from a 1980s music video.
Yeah, he's
blinding you with science. Ooh.
Yeah, and his abs.
Perfect.
So. So the other thing is you have the transformation of the Silver Banshee, which is pretty legit on there. That's the one thing I wasn't 100% certain that was the Silver Banshee on page 1, because I was like, what? She doesn't belong in this context.
Right. Yeah, like having Pop-Tarts.
right the domestic setting, the Pop-Tarts, the whole who the guys in the next room, the whole thing. I was just like so then you have the it's on the cover. They kind of spoil it on the cover, right?
Yeah.
The kryptonite claw, it's right there on the cover, and here you have Dr. or Mr. Graft or whatever it is, and he's got the kryptonite claw with these different colors of kryptonite on it and the whole rainbow thing. Now here's where I wish that Hutch had been able to make it tonight, right? Because like when I was a small child watching watching Super Friends, right? And reruns of the Filmation Superman on TV and all this kind of stuff, I was aware of the multicolors of kryptonite, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of got put away from my head, and I didn't really get into comics until I was in my just before my preteen years. And so when I came back in, there was only green kryptonite and red kryptonite, right? And that was red kryptonite was a synthetic that Luthor had invented, and this Luthor was Donald Trump, right? The real estate mogul guy, and so it was before the multiple colors of kryptonite came back into the canon, and they were all intentionally pushed out after the crisis. So for me, having like this glove with all the different colors of kryptonite on it feels really hokey, right? That's my first impression. But I know that's being shaped by my post-crisis reading habits, right?
At least pink kryptonite is on it, so like pink kryptonite would be horrible in this day and age.
Is that the black one that he's got there? Technically,
I think so.
I think it's red, black, blue, green, yellow. I think is what we got.
Yeah, it's just kind of colored purple, but it's supposed to be black kryptonite.
I think that's the black one. Yeah. Okay. That would make sense.
But like,
So somebody who isn't necessarily so tied to that post-crisis view of kryptonite, I would really be curious to see what that impression would be of the kryptonite claw.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. To me, the thing that I liked about this moment and this scene, and therefore the claw as well, and this is again something that Williamson is doing that I do appreciate, is he's like, okay, I'm going to do this very familiar kind of take. And again, that's what this book I think is meant to be. But he's like, I'm gonna basically I think the way I can describe it is that he's kind of like he's kind of doing like Superman DJing, and he's like, yo, I got this record, and you it's very familiar to you, but I'm gonna spin it a little different. And he's putting these spins, right? And so
you're not ready for this yet, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah. So what he's doing with this character and with this claw essentially is that I'm going to and what we've seen with what we've already done with the Parasite, or what he's already done with the Parasite is essentially, hey, familiar characters, but I'm remixing them a little bit. But it's not like I'm inverting them. You know what I mean? Because like that's the
Right.
type of like, the people who deconstruct it. Oh yeah, you thought this character was strong, but I'm just gonna kill him or whatever. This is like, no,
he's not Bendising it. Yeah, it's something different.
Yeah, it's a spin. So it's very familiar. So this character, Silver Banshee, is the antagonist of the issue. Essentially, she's the monster of the week, and but a little spin has been put on her this time, kind of like a spin had been put on Parasite. So it's like, okay, there's a lot that's familiar, but we're going to do a little bit, a little different, and that keeps things fresh. So like that little bit of remixing keeps things interesting, and I think it works for the book and for the story.
I agree. And this is panel 5 is the disappearing mustache. And for you guys keeping track of it.
I had not noticed. It's like I'd always thought that he just had like weird shading. I guess that is a mustache. It's very, very subtle.
Yeah, it's like the pencil thin mustache. Yeah, but dude, I know my mustaches.
All right. So we actually have 2 artists on this book, so there must have been some fill-ins on some pages. Jamal, actually, you know what? I think I even know where that happens because I think the pages that are actually, because I could tell. I was like, this art looks different. So we have Campbell and Nick Dragata slips in, and we'll see if we can tell when the switcheroo happens.
Okay. So Screams from the Past. I skipped right past the title page. I did not notice that. That's pretty fun. That's a pretty fun little title for this book. I like it quite a lot.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, with whatever's going on at the Silver Banshee's apartment, if it's her apartment, because we don't know whose apartment it is. I think it's fair to assume it's her apartment because Graft is definitely there for her, right?
Yeah.
So unless
it's Jenny's apartment.
No, I think if you go back to the right before she opens the door, all of the shoes look like they're hers. So I think it might be hers. Yeah, I think it's her apartment. We're playing comic book detective, ladies and gentlemen. Here, I'll pull it back up. This is what you're here for.
This is the deep dives.
All right, here I'll zoom in here. Okay, so right there, I'll zoom in even more. Oopsie daisy! Right there, see that shoe rack? That's like all lady shoes. That's not just hey, I was given a few places to put my shoes, and I'm in my boyfriend's apartment. That's my
also
lady
what kind of
shoe
guy
rack.
uses a shoe rack?
One with a wife. Yeah,
with a wife.
Yeah. There you go.
I use a shoe rack at least twice a week when I'm instructed to. Oh, she hates her.
Yeah. Comic book detectives right here. That's a woman's apartment.
Definitely a woman's apartment. So there you go, Siobhan. You've been found out. Inviting strange men to your apartment.
But
I would argue if your wife makes you
men.
use a shoe rack, it's also a woman's place.
Shared space. We share that, and I share not having being a burden about my shoes sometimes. Anyhow, moving on. So soon as we're done at the Banshee's apartment, we are then whisked across the city where Lex Luthor assaults a man with a nut, and is one of the more interesting scenes because he's tired of somebody prattling in the prison yard, and there's a whole 3-page sequence dedicated to this whole bit, and it ends with Superman scolding Lex Luthor for making a guy choke on an acorn.
Actually, it's not even the choking. I think, I think there's almost an implication of choking, but what actually happens is he basically more or less tried to kill the guy in his very Lex Luthor way, because the very next panel is, how did you know he was allergic to peanuts? So
but then Luthor's comment is that acorns do not contain the allergent.
He says technically don't have the allergen, which is like The guy probably still had a reaction because it says he almost died. So I think it was the sort of like, oh, this is Lex Luthor's normal MO, right? He kills somebody, and then when Superman says, hey, I'm going to take you to prison for it, then Lex Luthor comes up with this defense to slide out of it.
You
Technically,
I'm already in prison. Therefore, I'm immune. So Superman scolds Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor's like, come on, dude. We're bros now, and you've been helping out with the thing, and think of all of the amazing things that you and the Superman, the Super Corp, have done because of all of my great information. We've saved civilization like 6 times. It's awesome.
Yeah. They found the lost sword of Imperiex.
I can't remember who Imperiex is.
He was one of the like major Crisis. I think was it he was one of the like big crossover villains.
Yeah, the big crossover is I think it was called Imperiex War actually, but I didn't read any of it, so I don't remember that.
He's like super dark side or something.
Yeah. He's Warlord Darkseid.
So they found his lost sword.
And how awesome is that, right? And for reasons and stuff. Although one of the coolest ones on the next page is Superman and the Atom on.
Oh, you mean this one?
Oh yeah. I guess it's on that page. Is the last one and the Atom and some other shrinking people. I was just like, why am I not reading that comic?
That's always, I know, right?
Like the rest of the page, I was like, I can not care about any of this other stuff, but this one here with the fighting the death bees. Come on, man, DC.
That's pretty cool.
I'm glad you brought that up. So this is something that happened in Lone Star as well, and so that's why I'm reminded of it. But to you creators out there, don't tease a more exciting story in the story you're telling. It's a really dumb, I think, writing mistake, because what ends up happening is that you basically have the moment, you prompt your readers to have the moment that Rhys just had, which is, wow, I'd really rather be reading that. And it's like, you never want to be in that boat when you're reading a story.
Yeah. No, and we've actually done that in Forces where we'll allude to other stuff that because they're part of a world. So, but the thing we try to do is drop stories that we're going to tell, or that we haven't gotten to. So, the story I've been slowly working on in the background, I've Been to Hell, is referenced in the Parents' Day story, and Chad tells his girlfriend about part of that story. And I actually had one of our long-term readers email me like, did I miss a story? I thought I caught all up on stuff. And I'm like, no, man, this is one we're working on. That'll be out eventually. Well, a decade later, I'm still working on it. But trust me, someday you'll be able to read that story. The pencil and ink art is all done. I just have to color and letter it. Anyhow, so I think this kind of thing can be a great way to like key people in to other things that are going on. Sure. But the thing about it is it seems like a mistake to offer something that's this awesome and not share it, like not have that as a thing. Like if you're going to have a moment like this in a story, shouldn't the editorial be stepping in and saying, okay, you need to talk about what's going on here and this Superman comic and this Superman comic and Justice League over here. And we're using this to springboard the new Atom miniseries and, whatever else. Right. And I feel like DC used to do stuff like that. Right. Like that's how I got into the universe, was reading Batman. And all of a sudden it's talking about stuff happening in Teen Titans and talking about stuff happening in Superman. And so then I'd be going back to the spinner rack to see what I missed, So I feel like they used to do that more, and it wasn't just big events, right? It wasn't just giant events in the thing. It was actually like just regular monthly comics that were getting referenced. So anyhow, sorry, it's a little tangent.
All good. So yeah, so we have this uneasy kind of alliance with Superman and Lex Luthor, and it's still not working perfectly. And Superman's like, all right, I still don't quite trust you, and hey, maybe you should stop trying to kill people just because they, insulted me. And that's
Lex is like, maybe you have a point. And I love the thing that happens. It's like, I think it's on the next page, but like Clark comes out. No, it's at the end of that last page. But Lex is just like, I mean, not Lex. Superman is like, you have to be honest with me. You're saying we're getting ready to face off against your evil exes, and you got to tell me about the story on all of that, because I think we've earned each other's trust, and I'm going along with your old plan, but you say you need me to help save the world. You better be up with it. And like, then we have this moment, this flashback to Lex Luthor's thing. Lex Luthor tells a story about when he first came to Metropolis. And before we get into talking about the meat of this, this is where I think that Williamson is dropping some lore into this soft reboot thing that is pretty interesting, and he does it in a way that doesn't necessarily feel like a lore dump. It just feels like a dude telling a story, but it also references like these big chunks of Superman history, like from other timelines, right? I mean, not in the story. It's not like in the story crossing timelines, but like if you've been reading Superman comics, you know how some of the stuff has changed. It like references stuff from Silver Age stories and stuff from here, not in a way that makes it part of one continuity, but that flavors this version of Lex Luthor's past. Am I making sense?
Wait, hit me with that again.
That's a no. So what I was noticing is that some of the events of Luthor's past here reflect on, and we can talk about details a little bit as we go into this, reflect on different versions of Luthor in different iterations of Superman chronology, right?
Okay.
Continuity. And so it felt like kind of coming home, right? Like how Batman the animated series like folded in like bits of different versions of Batman to kind of make the prime Batman.
I get what you mean.
timeline.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That's an interesting take. I'm not sure that I don't know if I see that quite the way you're seeing it.
Well,
but I can
talk about
see
that a little bit, because
yeah,
this is some spoilery stuff that I think we gotta spoil, because I think I can see.
I think I can see why that interpretation. I think it's a potentially perfectly valid way of seeing it, though. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just like, I'm not. I never thought. I didn't.
You didn't necessarily pick up on that or whatever, or read.
Yeah, because and there's a moment at the end of this that kind of made me like rethink it a bit. But the thing that the reason why I was kind of like a little out of it is I was trying to confirm what I pretty well know, which is where does the artist change? And it's right here. Like, it's very clear that this is Campbell's art. Like, look at that chin, and then like this is somebody else.
Even the palette is different.
Yeah, it looks like a flat Stanley.
So I think this is where, is it Dragata? I think it was who was picking it up. So another thing, and this is something that I didn't pick up on until I started reading a lot of comics and really starting to get an eye for the artwork. But this is a very common thing in mainstream books where and I would say, especially when you've got someone who's putting a certain level of detail into their work, but it's also has to do with how the speed of a particular artist. And, if that artist is struggling to keep up with the monthly book schedule or however many titles they're on, then it's like, and the other side of it too, right? Artists don't necessarily work linearly. So when they get a script, sometimes they'll do, I think I've heard some artists will go, okay, when I get a script, I read it over and then I do like the hardest pages first, or maybe they do the easiest pages first. And so they're working on those pages, but they're not necessarily working on them from page 1 to one and then page 2. So you can be in a comic and suddenly be in at a particular point in that story, and suddenly if you have an eye for it, you can really notice that's someone else's artwork, depending on how closely they have the fill-in artist match the person who did the artwork. Sometimes I can think of some very stark examples where you're just like, it's night and day. It's like, that's somebody else.
Well, and sometimes they've seen people do that for narrative reasons. And here is a flashback, so it kind of makes sense. Although, having spent this much time with this page on the screen, I have to say that the way that the kerning on that one-way sign is driving me nuts. Like, that's a problem for me, man. It's all over the place.
I just love the fact that it's got the to add to the sort of like villainous character of it. It's the don't, which is highlighted there. That's a nice little subtle detail. It's like, we're not going to put the green walk for like this guy's associated with good. It's the red for don't. Like that's a nice little detail.
So, and one of the things about this too is that the setup is that this Lex Luthor has come from the country. He's from Smallville originally. And he got sick of the country life, so he's coming to the big city to make a splash. And he gets out there, and he hasn't lost hope in humanity. He believes there's good to be had, and so he sees that people are hurting and people are beat down. And he says, "I can do something about this. I'm a super genius." And so he becomes Super Lex or whatever. He becomes an urban protector using his gadgetry to save the day. Which
he's Metropolis's first superhero.
Metropolis's first superhero. L. He takes the L. Or villains, I don't know. Anyway, so the thing about this that hit me, first of all, you've got young Lex, who grew up in Smallville. That's part of the Silver Age origin. That wasn't there, and that's all part of the Smallville thing. That he's got his big head of red hair. That's an older version of the character, right? He still has hair when Superman's alive. And he's heroic, which all the Silver Age Lex Luthor was a hero of another world who did the whole Adam Strange thing. And so you got those elements from the Silver Age, right? And a couple from the Smallville TV show that worked themselves into this version of here. And I'm like, I'm interested to see how you play this out, Jack. I kind of want to see where you take this. So I'm instantly intrigued. I don't know that I like it.
Yeah,
but so far
that's kind of where I was at on it. I'm like, and I think it's how the story ends that actually sold me on what was going on. Superman's response is what sold me on it, because initially I was actually it actually irked me a bit, because I was like, oh, of course, it can't just be that this guy was always kind of, villainous. He had to have his, he had to have been a hero first. Sure. Okay. Everybody's a good guy. So I was, like I said, they rubbed me a teeny bit the wrong way, but then the end of this vignette, it was almost like Campbell, and a good writer will do this. A good writer will anticipate how an audience may react to something. And then before you're even fully processed it and raised your hand to object, he's already been like, got you covered. I anticipate your objection.
And one of the things I thought was really cool about this take on it, right? The semi-heroic Lex, because one of the things about it is his motivations are definitely more selfish. They're definitely more, I want people to love me. I want people to respect me. I want to be the one. I'm the one that can save Metropolis because I'm brilliant. Rather than, somebody's got to do something and I can. Right? Because that's kind of Superman's motive. Is he's not about glory. He's about the guy who can do it. He happens to be Superman. So he'll step up and take care of it. And so the idea that there's automatically this thing then also gets me thinking about the whole deal, like how trustworthy a narrator is Lex Luthor, right?
Yeah.
So you get to play with this, and the villains who are obviously villainous, they definitely seem more legitimately villainous than Lex in this particular circumstance. But
that's fair.
How might that play on later, right? And so they give an explanation about why He's got, okay. Cartoonicus is exactly what I said, though, about the version of Lex that I like. He's the villain who truly believes he's doing right all the time. You could be on the panel. You could have come on tonight. You knew what the topic was. You have access to the book. You just could have just showed up. Okay.
We'll get him next time.
Next
so if you want to share my screen, what I've got is this is the moment where I was like, because I was they'd done the whole like Lex Luthor man, and I was like, I don't know, Chief. I'm used to my kind of either villainous Lex.
Hang on, wait a second. So was Lex throwing the book at people?
What do you mean?
Okay,
like,
sorry.
Okay.
it's a Latin joke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lex means law. Okay.
Oh, I get you. Okay. But this was the moment.
Sorry, it was
wah,
lame.
wah. This was the moment where it kind of like pulled me back. This was the moment where Campbell was like, okay, I anticipate this is might rub me the wrong way. Because Superman's just like press X to doubt. And I was like, okay, cool, because I'm like, that's how I would react in that situation. And Superman's like, nah, like, I'm not buying it. So I'm like, okay, I was also not quite buying it. And so the fact that that Campbell had put like Superman's reaction as almost my reaction, I was like, okay, I'm back on board. Like, so Superman allows us the sort of angle to kind of do what Rhys, what you just said, which is to be like, this guy's not a trustworthy narrator. I don't have to trust that version of events. And when you combine that with the fact that it was done by a different artist, like a fill-in artist there's even the fact that it's like, this wasn't even told diegetically through the lens of truth that we're typically, accustomed to. Mm-hmm. So there's even that, there's the artistic layer as well. And I'm like, all right, this is, I'll buy it so far in terms of what's being put down. But like it was nice to have Superman be the and there's even this moment where Superman's like, okay, you believe every word you said, so like you're able to, so there's even that sense of like, this is your version of truth. I'm still not buying it because you're you. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I can buy that as well.
Well, and here's the great thing about this whole ordeal that I just absolutely love is so like he's caught like Lex in like a logic trap where he can't, like, because all Lex can do is see things from his perspective, because that's what any of us do, right? Mm-hmm. And so Lex has no motivation to be like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the real hero are the friends we made along the way. There's no possibility Lex has to back it up. So he reverts to what anybody does when you lose an argument. You get angry. And so I thought that was just such a spot on reaction there. I just thought it was great.
So that's the other thing I guess I want to emphasize, which is even the things that I'm not quite sold on from Campbell, from Williamson. So the things I'm not quite sold on by Williamson and Campbell, I guess. There's enough that's keeping me on that I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give you like, not just slack, but I'm willing to kind of like, suspend my disbelief, suspend some of the even, I guess, objections or whatever, because there's enough that's keeping me on board. And again, I think it's another mark of like, the quality of the writer. Yeah. What do you think, Metal?
Yeah, I mostly agree. I'm kind of, it's that vibe. You ever see The Princess Bride, and every single night he was like, good night, Wesley. Good work. Sleep well. I'll kill you tomorrow. That's kind of how I feel with the books. Like, it's just enough. Like, yeah, we'll have tomorrow.
Yeah, next issue. Yeah, I'll kill you next issue. Actually, I want to be a little more generous, because, like, it's not for me personally, and like that's a totally valid take. There are things I'm genuinely enjoying as well. Like, I am genuinely kind of liking the farm and graft. I'm looking forward to their big bad evil plan. And the moments some of the twists that they're putting on the characters is, like I said, they're just kind of refreshing to me, and I do genuinely like those without much reservation at all.
I do like the spins. I think that's what's really keeping me on here. Is like I do want to see like what he does with all this stuff. I'm not really a fan of the whole small town Lex coming to the big city thing, as we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
So it's like it's okay that it's there. It's not really ruining things for me.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. It's and again, it's I think this is something that we've lost in comic book criticism. There's almost no writer or story team where it's like, I'm 100% on board with every decision they've ever made.
Yeah.
What changed in recent years was the fact that people were making such gross mistakes, and some of them being very spiteful about it, that it was as you say, ruining it. So it's totally fine to, like something and also dislike something about a book that you're reading. I think it also it shows that you're engaged with it. And it's the history of the medium. Like the early fans of Batman would be like, I love this, I hate all of these things. Like fandom was like built on people nitpicking these books to death. But it just seems, like I said, in recent years, it's been so binary with like, you either have to love everything and pretend that you love everything, or you're a right-wing bigot. And and I think it's ruined. I think that itself has ruined the conversation. It's poisoned the well so badly.
Yeah, because I think the way I see storytelling in general is kind of like a kid playing in their sandbox with their toys, right? So if you come up with something original, you get to name all the toys, you get to give them their personalities, and you get to like decide what the sandbox is. But when then you come into something that's already been made, like these icons like DC, you're playing in somebody else's sandbox, and you want to see what interesting thing this person will do in that sandbox with those toys. But what you don't want them doing is renaming the toys or like changing the way they're supposed to work in the sandbox.
Pissing on them.
Pissing in the corner, or bringing their kin to use it like a litter box. You want them to just do interesting things in the sandbox that's already been created for them. And I would say mostly so far from the story, that's what's been happening. It's like, this is how I accept taking on the mantle of somebody else's world should be.
Yeah, and he's playing in the sandbox, and he might be doing like I said, I don't like that sandcastle 100% that he built, but I'm like, he's still playing in the sandbox, and he's not, like I said, he's not crapping in it.
Yeah, as the kids say, let him cook.
Yeah, there we go. Jim Tuner says creators like Tom King and Bendis are insufferable. I don't know what that was in reference to, but it is correct. So I'm just going to say yes.
So we have, does anyone think companies purposely push this idea in order to scare off critique of their work? I don't think most companies are that self-aware of their stuff, honestly.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
I think that there's not that much investment in it as much as that, because I really think that there's such a separation between the market and the creative class in comics that I don't think people are responding to critique in that way. Typically, I think they just do what they're doing, and that's it.
If I could add a tweak to that, I don't to Cartoonicus' question. So I think that, as I understand it, Cartoonicus is asking, does anyone think the companies purposely push the idea of basically either love this comic or you're a bigot as a way to silence critique and just make the marketing more like just positive? And I would say, I don't think that it was necessarily planned that way. So I agree with Rhys to that point. But I will say this. I do think that as most companies are very opportunistic, I would say that I think they have taken advantage. And I think there is deliberate bad actors in the scenes that we have who do take advantage of that to shield themselves from criticism and take advantage of it to just create a hug box of just, I will only hear anything that's just positive, and anything that is critical means that you are an enemy, essentially. So I think
that's probably fair. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There are people that have taken advantage of it, or even not realized it. But I don't think it's an intentional marketing thing that marketing is doing.
Yeah, I don't think it's at the company level, but there's definitely creators in it that have known that, especially on social media.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and you track the history, the sordid history between Doug Ernst columns and Dan Slott, I definitely think that Dan may have taken that position as a way of insulating himself from a diminutive American German man with an opinion. But
I think Dan was doing that. I think the history, and this was like one of the things. This was one of the seeds that germinated into Comicsgate. It was the forums on comic book resources, because Dan was doing that. I think Dan was. I don't know all the particulars, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that he was essentially, I think, doing that on those forums, and people started to react to that and be like, "What are you doing? You can't just insult us. We're the ones who pay the bills and who love this stuff. And every time we say that you're a bad writer, you're basically cursing at us." And then,
it got to the point where the rumors are that Dan specifically requested of it, but it was doubtless that anybody who formed a cogent argument against Dan or critiqued his books was unpersoned from the boards, and that's what got Doug into blogging, because he couldn't write his reviews on CBR. And
that makes sense. Yeah, and it's sad.
So then he went from blogging to doing YouTube commentary.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. These were precursors. Yeah.
Yeah. And back in 08, 09.
These are and the other thing I'll mention is, it's just sad because, like, those forums are gone. Like, you'd have to do Wayback Machine stuff to probably find the material, or someone probably has them archived. But that used to be, I never participated in them, but I would occasionally look at them. But there was a healthy a comic book discussion.
Oh yeah,
that happened there, and it's poof. CBR is now just a clickbait farm. It's really tragic.
It was an awesome site back in the day.
Yeah.
In fact, I was pretty active in the fan community back in 2001, and one of the first places I posted about my first son's birth was CBR, because there were people that we had enough communication that they cared.
Wow.
And So
when did you get banned?
Oh, I didn't get banned. Things started getting really weird when about the time that Dixon was uninvited from the DC books, and just before cross gen happened. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I think maybe I'll exit. It was convenient for me to leave about that time. So
yeah. No, that's
so I actually I avoided the first ban hammers by just not being there.
Gotcha. Because there's no way you would have, if you were there, there's no way you would have avoided them. Knowing you, there's just no possible way.
This is true. Okay, let's change subjects a little bit.
Yeah. So this is a nice page by Campbell. And this is kind of like, I think the tweak on Banshee's powers. You know, she's got
before we get into this part of the story, I want to back up just a little bit. We don't have to necessarily show the stuff, but I want to flash back to something, because one of the things that we were seeing in issue 2 was they introduced Marilyn Moonlight, right?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Right? And I know you hated the idea, whatever. They bring it back for a page. Not her character. Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are walking down the street to get coffee, and Lois says, "Jimmy, your family's lived in Metropolis forever. Do you know anything about Marilyn Moonlight? Does that name mean anything to you?" And Jimmy says, "Oh man, my grandfather used to talk about these stories about this," and they go on talking about this Old West thingamy, and it happens real quick, and then all of a sudden the Silver Banshee attacks and interrupts the story. Darn it.
That's right. Yeah, no, yeah. Williamson is definitely being like, "Hey, remember that character who showed up in like the second issue or so? Yeah, I'm planting those seeds. She's not going to be important later when we have the final conference, the finale. Wink, 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 wink."
Well, and as long as you have an organic build-up to this new character that digs it in, and I love history stories. That's one of the reasons Starman was so awesome to me, was because they took time to dig into the archives and to tell and retell stories. And I actually went back. It doesn't matter. But the point is I if it's done well, this is the kind of piece in a story that I just love. So so far, I am really liking the direction for Marilyn Moon Knight. And it's also fun to me to think about the possibility, because if Marilyn was the first protector of Metropolis, then Lex wasn't.
Yeah.
So
I guess
that would be a fun thing to play with too.
The only thing that I'm a little bit worried about, and I'm like a little worried about, is I hope this isn't another instance in the long list of instances. I hope that Williamson is a good enough writer, and he's built some faith here. But you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Okay, where it's like, Superman, you weren't the first protector of Metropolis. A strong, independent black woman who was, fought slavery. She's the real original hero, and she's gonna definitely save the day as opposed to you. And I'm like, if that happens, I'm gonna like. That's where it's like, yeah, I'm here for Superman,
Right.
So
Well,
like, you can have your character, but this is something that sometimes it's a very immature writing move to basically sell your new character that you made by talking down to pissing on the sandbox. And I'll give an example of where this happened. The introduction of Silk to the Marvel Universe by Dan Slott was the most fan fiction tier garbage that I've ever read. It was almost like he read the instruction manual for how to write a Mary Sue introduction story. And it was like every step.
Amazing fanfic from the 60s, and he was just like,
it was terrible. And I'm just so, and again, you can work in a new character, but you have to be careful because this is a sandbox. And if the new kid comes into the sandbox that you've never seen before, and he says, "My toys are better than all of your toys," you're not going to just be like, "Oh, yes, please." You're going to be turned off by that. It's the most natural gut instinct we have. And so I'm hoping Williamson is, and I think he's a better writer than this. I have faith, but there's just a little worry because we've been burned before. We've had stories where this has happened. So I'm just hoping.
Rhys, you're laughing at the same thing I'm laughing at, aren't you?
Yeah. I got to share it quick.
Okay. And Fizz says, "Yeah, that's the point." Fizz, the Spider-Man instance, it has similar powers, is better than the main hero, and the main hero and them have a romantic hookup. It was every single. Oh, that's great.
We haven't had a pickle in too long, so I appreciate this one greatly.
It's colored too. That's really that's a different rendering than I'm used to seeing. So are we?
I am the real super pickle. I mean superhero.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Twitless. I do. I think the best way to handle this character, especially like, one of the cool things about introducing a new character is if people tend to like them, you could actually do their own series. So if I was handling this character, what I would do is I would put them in the role of just like hero support, right? She's got a unique power, which it seems to be the manipulation of moonlight. That's all we know about her right now, right?
Yeah.
And
she's a ghost horse, right?
She's a ghost horse, yeah. But she can use moonlight, which is basically just refracted sunlight. So she can recharge Superman. So she doesn't have to be like super powerful. She could come in like in clutch when he needs it and be like, "Don't worry, Superman, you got this," right? And then if people really like her on a smaller scale in the past, where there weren't like necessarily all these huge crazy bad guys that only Superman could fight, you could go and tell like her story of when she was back there. And you could even delineate, like, well, it wasn't Metropolis yet, because really it wasn't Metropolis till it became a big city.
Do you actually think, hold on, I have because I'm not into the tie-ins, but I'm pretty sure there's the new crossover that happened for DC was called Night Terrors, I think.
Yep.
Was this planting a setup for her to show up in that?
I don't
Maybe,
know.
I
I haven't been paying attention to that at all.
Okay. Well, I think Williamson was writing for that, and I was at some point going to check it out just because, again, he's earned enough good will out of me. I was like, all right, I'll read another thing you did. But I think that's also why Superman got put. I think there's like I think there was a delay on a bunch of DC books because of that crossover. So anyway,
Just
so
fine
that's
with
just
that. Like, I think bringing in somebody to support the character, to build them up, is the better way to go. You should never bring somebody in to basically be like, I'm supplanting the character by coming in.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do that, I think you have to be extremely careful about doing it. I think you need to know you're doing it. And I think you need to have, first off, don't do it. Secondly, if you are going to do it, I don't know. I don't do it. But so Superman fights Silver Banshee. And the way this particular issue ends is basically, I think this is fine to spoil.
Well, and before we get to that, one thing I wanted to talk about too, when Lex, because I think it's important for this, for also the setup, is Lex sends Superman down to the Undercity, and he says that the reason Metropolis is the city of the future is because it's forgotten its past, and it's just gobs of city underneath the city that's just been buried and built over top of, and I'm like,
Is this Futurama?
I don't know. Probably. But gotta steal it from somewhere. But yeah, so then anyway, back to the thing, Superman's fighting the Silver Banshee with her new powers of multiple spirits, soul chomping spirits, and Superman's about to smack her around a little, and suddenly, oh no, Jimmy Olsen steps in the way.
He was the one who was getting Pop-Tarts.
He was the one who was about to get Pop-Tarts. He can't. Superman, stop! She has my Pop-Tarts.
She's popping his tart.
Oh my god.
No, I think that's the other way around.
Not in that relationship.
Well, and here's the thing is, I figured out that it was Jimmy Olsen on page 1 because she says, "Wake up, turtle boy."
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
And then talks about how that the boss lady might be around any minute. So
the Turtle Boy thing is a good reference because all those classic.
Yeah.
So many times he got.
So you got so flashbacks, the Silver Age. You got Turtle Boy. You got the multiple colors of kryptonite, right? You got the heroic Lex Luthor. You got Luthor pre-villain with hair, right? All that kind of stuff. So definitely tucking these member berries in. And usually I hate that kind of stuff, right? Like seriously, like a couple years ago when everybody was like, "Oh, Stranger Things, blah blah blah, it's my childhood," and I'm like, "Listen, all you little bastards, you think you're getting 1 minute of my time? You can forget about it with your crappy show." Like, I don't want to be in pander to. Don't tell me I'm old. I know it.
The first season was pretty good. I definitely liked that.
Yeah, it's so blatantly trying to be just like, "Hey, you guys like ET? You watch the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon on Sunday mornings."
I liked the first episode. It was okay. The first
you can
season.
like it.
I'm just
saying it was obviously meant to trap people like me, and people like that can go jump off take a long walk off a short pier.
I think it was meant to trap people like me. I think it's for millennials. I think it's meant to like briefly appeal to your generation. It's mostly, I think, for like, because I was very much a child, kind of at. Well, hold on. 80s? Yeah. I was 80s child.
Yeah.
So it's like, E.T. came out when I was a kid, kind of a thing.
I was 82.
Oh, is AT that's just before me then? Okay.
Yeah, you would have been. I mean, ET would have been on TV when you were a small
There
child.
we go. That would make sense.
But,
Yeah, okay.
But it was already passe by then. Okay.
Gotcha.
He says Jim Tuner says it was not stolen from Futurama. It was stolen from the anime Big O. Which
I mean, it could. Big O did have an underground city. The manga, which predates the show by 2 years, actually came out the same year Futurama did. So Futurama, as a series, if you're watching TV, is actually older than Big O.
So who knows? Maybe both. Also, like the idea of the Undercity. I mean, those exist in some big cities anyway. Abandoned subways and all that kind of stuff. So it's not too big a guess on that.
Well, the rationale that they gave that I liked is they said they're essentially kind of, I think, alluding to that Metropolis has had so many, they're referencing their own lore. Every single time there's a big, disaster, right? And so, Metropolis obviously has to be rebuilt on some scale. And they're like, this is the repercussions of that. You have an underground graveyard of a city. And it's an interesting, what I like about it is that it's a nod that is consistent, or at least it's something that can be consistent with past lore. And it's also something that gives you I'm using Metal Sandbox term is getting a lot of mileage tonight. It gives you, and this is something that I like when creators do well, when a writer creates another sandbox to play in. Because when you have a secret underground city underneath your main city, you just created a whole playground that anybody can pick up and be like, oh, look, here's a new thing we found underneath down here. So it's neat because it's something that other people could play with if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've always used the term sandbox for storytelling. I think it's very fitting, especially when you go from like possibly passing one story from like a person to another, or even when you do collaborative works, like you're inviting somebody to come play in your sandbox with you.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Yeah. That's basically where Superman number 4 ends, with a bunch of little heart panels there, which is kind of funny. But Hiroshi Paradox says, I have the first 2 volumes worth of the Big O manga in floppies. Unfortunately, the later volumes in trade format are out of print and impossibly expensive. There's what's surprising to me, the manga that are considered to be fairly classic by some people, and getting a hold of some of them can be tricky.
Yeah, you gotta have some serious money to get Battle Angel Alita. The digitals aren't terribly expensive.
Did you say Battle Angel Lolita?
No, I said Alita.
I don't know. That's not what I heard.
No, I heard Alita.
I'm kidding.
Hey, there's a lot of L's and T's, and I've been drinking. So it was just a little bit of whiskey, but I'm going to use it as an excuse.
You heard it here, folks. Battle Angel Lolita.
And I'm all winded because my dog decided he had to go upstairs in the middle of your speech. So I just ran upstairs to let the dog upstairs.
Especially when like Dark Horse got involved, a lot of the stuff that they did, it's really hard to find complete versions because they split it between floppies and trades, and some of them never actually got proper trades. Almost anything Viz did, you can find like an actual like Tankobon or like trade or something of it. But...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but if it gets, the older it gets, because I was trying to find Gone, and that sucker is getting hard. Yeah, and like I said, that was a fairly well received.
Trigun's a hard one to find too, like the older parts of Trigun.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. All right,
Probably
so
some sort of market to hatch into if you ever had a couple, spare $100,000.
Yeah, which is great. Do we have any concluding thoughts on Superman number 4?
I'll tell you what, I am really, really excited to see where the story goes. Even with the cheesy elements, I'm getting the feeling like it's going to be something that I want to follow where it is. So, yeah, you got me for another month, Williamson. So
yeah, I'll kill you tomorrow.
So, one thing I do want to address, because I don't even understand this reference.
Smallville show.
Smallville. Okay, that was the blonde chick on Smallville, right? Who was in the sex cult in real life?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I couldn't remember her character much because I saw the first season years and years ago, but I don't remember that much of it, except the Lex Luthor parts. Something about Michael, whatever his name was the star of the show. Rosenberg? Is that his last name?
Oh, Rosenbaum?
Rosenbaum. There you go. Yeah. He was the star.
The guy plays Lex, right?
Yeah, the guy who plays Lex. Yeah, he was also the voice of the Flash in JLA in the JLU.
He was Flash. He did a really good Flash.
Oh, great Flash. Great Flash.
Yeah, it's Michael Rosenbaum. Yeah. His career went. I think he left. Because I think he didn't want to get like too typecast, or he wanted to be able to branch out and do other things. His career went nowhere. Absolutely nowhere.
I think he did a bunch of voice acting other than the Flash too. But
but that's not typically if you're a Hollywood actor, you don't go, yeah, I'm getting so much voice acting.
If it pays the bills, it pays the bills.
It's so weird the way we treat it here. In Japan, voice actors are actually celebrities, some of them even higher than the live actors.
Hiroshi says he has a podcast.
Moderately successful podcast. Well, that's more than I have. So, which is no disrespect to those of you guys who are tuning in. I appreciate you being here. But you are the few, the proud, the Mattriarchy listeners. So
honestly, I think the only one, this is kind of weird, but like the only one who like who has had a career, I think, after post Smallville, was Cassidy Freeman, one who played Tess, because she got to be on Longmire. That was a very well received show.
I don't even remember who that character is.
She's what? Yeah, she was like Lex's like long lost sister, and she showed up in.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
But
like I said, I watched the first season. That's it.
The girl who played Lois got to be in some failed stuff. Yeah, she went like no one on that show went anywhere afterwards.
Well, hey, the guy who played Pa, he was on Dukes of Hazzard. So Oh wait.
I mean, like,
the other way.
Yeah, other way around. Yeah, show. All the young people, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, Tom Welling's such a heartthrob. He can play Superman in the movies," and it was like, no.
Here we go. Here you go. Cartoonicus with the absolute Cartoonicus take. Patrick Warburton said he'd rather play 10 low-paying voice acting jobs than one high-paying live-action job.
Well, he did get to play the man. I think. No, wait, no, he did.
He was Kronk, which is of course.
Yeah, he played Kronk. Yeah.
And he was the Tick. So
he played several really good roles. Really good roles.
He did Superman for those.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld commercials.
I don't think other ones. Oh, he actually has like one of the biggest roles. He's a Family Guy. He played Joe. Like they talk about like a really long career. He just played Joe in the wheelchair for like what? How many seasons is it on now? 20?
Something. I don't know.
Do not get Cartoonicus started on Patrick Warburton. It's his default voice for like every third character. Whenever you ask Cartoonicus to cast voice actors, Patrick Warburton will be the third choice. Well, then, like every other character will be played by Patrick Warburton.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and in fairness, like Patrick Warburton does have one of those voices, so he really could.
Yeah.
Patrick Warburton, Dietrich Bader, they've got that voice.
Hiroshi says Smallville later seasons where Sci-Fi Channel actors went to guest star after their shows ended.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, Hiroshi says in relation to Patrick Warburton, even the ladies.
I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't put it past Cartoonicus to be like,
That's
what?
amazing.
You know who should voice this female character? Patrick Warburton.
Patrick Warburton can always. I love Patrick Warburton's voice. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Let's be fair. So, okay, well, that's the show for this week. Next week, guys, next week we begin the 6-week journey into the heart of Scott Pilgrim. Are you ready? Are you ready? We are making this a 6-week extravaganza, 1 week dedicated to each of the 6 volumes of Scott Pilgrim. So next week, we will be doing a deep dive review into Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life, hosted by The Metal. And that's going to be pretty exciting. Yeah. Very, very, very cool. And we're going to dig into it. So, yeah. That's the story, man. That's the story. No, nothing about Scott Pilgrim. It's remarkable. It's a little bit action, a little bit slice of life.
You should have said, well, you're going to.
You're going to. There you go. You will.
We're going to give you a crash course over.
You will know
6
all
weeks.
sorts of things about Scott Pilgrim within the next 6 weeks. So,
which actually is almost the opposite of a crash course, because you could just read like the whole thing in like a week if you spread it out.
Yeah. I read all 6 volumes over a weekend. So, and that was also the same weekend that I read Blankets.
Oh gosh.
So I read a lot that weekend.
1 week without mentioning Blankets. Challenge impossible. Failed.
I guess we have talked about Blankets every week since I read Blankets. I think we have now. I think that like we were talking when we first read Blankets that I felt like it was outsized in its impact. I may have to
reevaluate that position.
Reevaluate the premise, because apparently it is so influential that even though we hate it, we can't not mention that we hate it.
We need to put a sign behind Rhys that says like blank days since Blanket was mentioned, and it's like it's always on 0.
It's got to be weeks, because I don't talk about Blankets on the daily.
Yeah, but it'll just get reset every single stream, so we can still leave it at days.
Well, okay, so here's the question. We have this. Did Scott Pilgrim wash the foul taste of Blankets out of your brain that weekend? It was a stark like contrast, because it's like the inverse story. No, it's the converse story to Blankets. They actually hit a lot of the same thematic elements. One's obviously memoir, one's not. But there's a lot of the same thematic elements about growing up, about maturity, about accepting responsibility, about relationships.
Except Scott Pilgrim resolves.
Yeah, Scott Pilgrim resolves. But it's like if Scott Pilgrim is somebody who struggles in the same way that the struggles in Blankets happen. I mean, with the same things, but Scott grows up, and Craig, whatever, I can't remember the name even, seems to not.
Thompson.
At least Thompson. At least not in the pages of his book, doesn't grow up, and Scott's oblivious to the fact he needs to grow up, whereas Thompson believes he doesn't need to grow up, that he's already achieved. So yeah, they're different people that encounter similar modes of universal experience. Also, Scott Pilgrim has to actually fight people.
I'm going to be the minority opinion on those panels, I think, but I think it'll be a useful discussion.
Yeah. Anyway, I liked it. I can also see why someone would hate it, but I liked it. We'll talk about that next week. So,
alrighty.
Yeah. That's the story.
Did he draw shirtless? I did not know that. That's interesting.
I'm sorry. It's a terrible end of the show. Jim says, who mentioned Blankets? Are we talking about Blankets? We're not anymore. We have to stop.
End it now before we
end it now before we get off talking about it again. I have the image in my mind now and I can't get away from it. Okay, next week, Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life. Hey, oh man, I have to bring it down. Also, the guy who did The Bad Guys released a new series the first issue of a new series called Cat on the Run. It is I started reading it. It looks hilarious, and so I'll probably be talking about that at some point too, because it's ridiculous. The premise is ridiculous. You never believe it. But it's also like fully comic book. That's the other thing is it's I hadn't read all the bad guy stuff, but one of the interesting things about the first volume is that it kind of bridges the line between comic and picture book. Cat on the Run is completely a comic. It's great, and so far I've read the first 10 pages. It's pretty awesome. But anyhow, get out there, go experience some comics, go check them out. They're out there in the world, in the wild. Find them and learn to love them. And don't read blankets. Stay away from blankets. Good night.